Welcome to part 25 of my heraldic tour of the Great Cloister of Canterbury Cathedral, covering Bay 33, which is Archbishop Arundel's extended family and was by my estimation constructed between March and April 1413. And it sits outside the chapter house door in the middle of the East Walk. At the beginning of a medieval roll of arms, we can sometimes find the family arms of the person for whom the roll was commissioned. And if that person was not royal, then the royal family would generally be given precedence. Bay 33, with its prime location, is analogous to the first page of such a roll, while the adjacent Bay 32 has the kings, saints and heroes generally given precedence in their placement towards the beginning of a roll. Every personal shield in Bay 33, which has the episcopal arms of Archbishop Arundel at its centre, belonged to one of his relations. Nearly all are blood relations, the exception being the spouses of blood relations. The four shields lying in closest proximity to the central boss are for the Archbishop's parents, Richard FitzAlan, Earl of Arundel, and Eleanor of Lancaster at 28, for his sister Alice FitzAlan and her husband Thomas Holland, 2nd Earl of Kent, at 20, for his sister Joan FitzAlan and her husband Humphrey de Bohun or Boone at 14, and for King Henry IV at 22. Rather curiously, the king's arms are carved smaller than the others, and this might have been to emphasise the fact that in this particular bay he was not the one being honoured. That was the function of Bay 32. The king was the Archbishop's first cousin through his mother Blanche of Lancaster, sister of Eleanor. He was also married to the Archbishop's niece Mary de Bohun. In my book I describe the king as a nephew of the Archbishop, which I meant in the sense of a nephew-in-law. This is a term recognised by the Oxford English Dictionary, but it is not very much used, and in this talk I will only consider nieces and nephews by blood. Outside the central 5 shields, the arrangement is somewhat arbitrary. All 4 of the king's sons, the Archbishop's great-nephews, are here. The Prince of Wales at 9, Prince Thomas, Duke of Clarence at 5, Prince John, later the Duke of Bedford at 23, and Prince Humphrey, later Duke of Gloucester at 24. Princess Philippa is at 13, the king's youngest daughter, her royal arms being impaled with those of her husband, the King of Denmark. The other specifically royal arms in the bay are for the Queen, Joan of Navarre, at 37, for the king's sister, Elizabeth of Lancaster, and her husband, Sir John Cornwall, at 12, for the king's sister, Catherine, and her husband, the King of Castile and Leon, at 33, with the Spanish quarterings reversed as her sign as a dowager, and the union of the Prince Thomas with the Archbishop's niece Margaret Holland at 16. These shields are not all in good condition, and here are some of my own drawings. On the left, the arms of the Queen, England impaling Navarre. In the centre, Cornwall impaling the royal arms, and on the right we have the Duke of Clarence impaling Holland. Next, there are the marriages of the three other nieces, the sisters of Margaret Holland. They occur in no proximity to the arms of their parents at 20, but were notwithstanding placed together in a crescent. They are Eleanor Holland, married to Roger Mortimer, Earl of March at 29, with Eleanor's second marriage to Thomas Montague, Earl of Salisbury at 35. The second niece is Joan Holland, with her husband Henry Lord Scrope of Masham at 30. Lord Scrope was executed for treason only 2 years later. The third niece is Elizabeth Holland, married to John Neville, eldest son of the first Earl of Westmoreland, at 39. Most probably the undifferenced arms of Holland at 19 stood, at least in part, for the brother of these sisters, Thomas Holland, Earl of Kent, who was executed in 1400 as an enemy of Henry IV. This is part of the reconciliatory aspect of the cloister, which is much more fully realised in Bay 30. Eleanor Holland was undoubtedly a cloister benefactor because, in addition to both of her marriages, we have shields for her 3 children. For her son Edmund Mortimer, Earl of March, at 18. For her deceased daughter Anne Mortimer, married to Richard Plantagenet, Earl of Cambridge, at 4. And for her daughter Eleanor Mortimer, married to Edward Courtenay, at 10. The scheme continues with the Archbishop's 2 nieces who were daughters of his brother Richard, Earl of Arundel, by his wife Elizabeth, sister of Humphrey de Bohun. They are Elizabeth Fitzalan at 8, married to Thomas Mowbray, Duke of Norfolk, who died in exile in 1399, and Margaret Fitzalan at 6, married to Sir Rowland Lental. Here are some better images of these shields. Top left, Courtenay impaling Mortimer. Bottom left, Plantagenet of Cambridge impaling Mortimer. In the centre, Lental impaling Fitzalan, and on the right the Lion of Mowbray impaling Fitzalan. Of considerable interest is the small Percy family grouping, as this family was still under attainder in 1413 for rebellion against Henry IV. Henry Percy, 1st Earl of Northumberland, was the Archbishop's cousin through his mother Mary of Lancaster. His arms of Percy quartering Lucy have been placed at 38, with the quarterings reversed as a sign of attainder. The other 2 shields reveal who sponsored the arms. These are Percy impaling Clifford at 27, for Elizabeth Percy, the daughter of Sir Henry Percy the Younger, known as Hotspur, and her husband John Lord Clifford. These arms are highly unusual in that not only are the Percy quarterings reversed, but the impalements are reversed, so that the arms of the wife occur on the dominant dexter side. This was a means apparently devised by the Archbishop to demonstrate that the wife was the donor. The last of this Percy group is Camoys impaling Mortimer at 26 for Hotspur's widow, Elizabeth Mortimer, married to Lord Camoys. Elizabeth Mortimer is the only individual in this bay who is not a blood relation of the Archbishop. She was, however, related twice over by marriage, as the widow of Hotspur, who was the Archbishop's cousin once removed, and as the sister-in-law of the Archbishop's niece, Eleanor Holland. The presence of the Percy arms is a second reconciliatory aspect of the bay, and there is also a third. We have at 15 the impaled arms of Thomas Despenser, Earl of Gloucester, executed for treason in 1400, and his wife Constance of York, herself guilty of extreme treachery on behalf of the Mortimer family in 1405. The Archbishop was only very distantly related to the Yorks. His link to Thomas Despenser is through his father's first marriage to Isabella Despenser, a marriage which was rather cruelly annulled, resulting in the Archbishop's eldest half-siblings being rendered illegitimate. Through this rather curious connection, Despenser was the Archbishop's cousin once removed. Here are these shields in better detail. On the left, those curious arms of Percy and Lucy impaling Clifford. In the centre, Camoys impaling Mortimer, and on the right, Despenser impaling Plantagenet. There remain only 3 other devices of which some mention must be made. The arms of Beaumont at 34 relate to the Archbishop's Beaumont kinsmen, the children of his mother Eleanor by her first husband John Lord Beaumont. The Beaumont pedigree occupies a significant part of Bay 31. We have at 2 the arms of God in the form of the Holy Trinity. Heraldry was so important to the medieval mind that even the Almighty had to be accorded arms. At 25 is a shield which puzzled me for a long time, before I came to the conclusion that it has to be a cri de coeur from the Archbishop. We have a cross Calvary between a cross of St. Andrew and a sword. It surely relates to the events of 1397, when the Archbishop's brother was executed with the sword, and he himself was exiled by instrument of being translated to the See of St. Andrews in Scotland, where Richard II had no jurisdiction. The message seems clear. The See of St. Andrews and the sword were my Calvary. Arundel's extended family was large, but every member of it was represented somewhere in the cloister. These were primarily in Bay 33, but with others in Bay 30. The remainder had already been incorporated elsewhere. These included his cousins the Lords Strange of Blakemere, Strange of Knockin, of Talbot, of Willoughby of Eresby, and his nephews Lord Charlton and John Arundel, Lord Maltravers.